What is going on, everybody? 'Tis I, the enigma of the gun airwaves, Miyanovich, welcoming you to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast, where unprecedented perspectives are packed into the cargo hold for the LGO Lens spaceship Voyagio.
That's fucking Italian.
Don't believe that evolution is possible with guns and public safety in America? It's already happening, y'all. Minds are evolving. Think guns versus public safety is the only game in town, do ya? Think culture war is the big boss, do ya? Then keep your ass in the past. Everyone else, all aboard!
Yeah. So my parents divorced when I was 3 years old, and so I was raised by my mother. But my father was always in my life. My father, um, I got my name from my parents, but primarily be from my father. He changed his name from Norman Tyus to Kwame Olubala Kenyatta. He no longer wanted to carry on the legacy of wearing a name that was imposed upon his ancestors. And so he decided to name himself after Kwame Nkrumah and Jomo Kenyatta. So he changed his complete name. And so that's how I was given an African name. I am a descendant of a slave, Africans in America who had everything stripped of them. But I was given the name Chinyelu Kofi Akin Kenyatta. And so my name is Pan-African like my bloodline. And so there's Chinyelu's Nigerian, Kofi is Ghanaian, and then our surname Kenyatta is obviously Kenyan. And so I tell that story to give a picture of the mindset that my father came to be at a young age. And so he really was an adopter of the Black liberation, Black power movement. And so he began to join organizations that were value aligned. And so the Malcolm X grassroots community, the Republic of New Africa, NAPO, lots of organizations that were dedicated to Black empowerment, Black liberation. And so he would consider himself a Black nationalist. And so along with that nationalism, similar to the Black Panther Party, there was a recognition of the role of armed self-defense and realizing that everything in our journey in America has told us that we were in a hostile land. And in order to deal with that hostility, you have to take a multi-pronged approach, including armed self-defense. And so firearm ownership was a big part of his belief. And so he had firearms throughout his home, and he took me to one of what was the only, and now it's no longer, gun range in Detroit, on the east side. And that was my first introduction to firearms. I think I was in middle school at the time. I forget exactly what age, but that was, my first introduction. One time I was visiting his home, and as gun owners, they tend to think they're doing a better job of securing their firearms than they actually are. And I stumbled upon the firearm. Luckily, I didn't do anything. There was no negligent discharge, but he took that as an opportunity to really familiarize me with firearms and how to use them. So if that situation occurred again, that I would know what to do, what not to do, etc. And so that was my first introduction to firearms. And then that accelerated once I went to college in Virginia, and there was from born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I went to school in Virginia, Hampton University, and Virginia had a totally different gun culture. No one, still to this day, not many people open carry here in Michigan. In Virginia, I saw a lot of people open carry, and I was like, wow, that's new. And so I got my first CPL when I turned 21 in Virginia. And then I came back to the city of Detroit and became a NRA instructor because I graduated in 2008 in the midst of the recession, and I couldn't find a job. So And so that's really how I got into it. It's like, I need to make some money. And so let me pay this, was it 500 or something? It was under $1,000. Paid that fee and got trained and started teaching courses, to survive. And so that's kind of how I got into it. Yeah.
And then how did that translate into the Black Bottom Gun Club getting started? You and Chad started the Black Bottom Gun Club. How did that work out?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Chad and I met when we were working for an organization, that was, a program in the school system, working with, children, youth, that were having behavioral and academic issues. And similar to our approach with firearm ownership, we worked to get to the root cause of what their issues were. Instead of punishing them, we loved on them. We equipped them with the tools necessary to, address, their trauma appropriately, because a lot of times our kids were experiencing trauma and then navigating it as they saw fit without any instruction or guidance or help. And so we tried to equip them with the tools, necessary, as well as the love that they needed in order to, go on that journey. And so Chad and I met when we were both facilitators with that organization. We went on to, launch another nonprofit in 2016. And then in 2017, around, the Philando Castile murder, I was teaching firearms courses, and Chad knew about that from me advertising. And the Philando Castile murder happened, and there were no mainstream gun advocates or gun rights groups that were standing up for his defense that we saw. And then the NRA released this propaganda, video that really, I found to be, even though I'm an NRA instructor, I found to be very distasteful, and it really highlighted that is not a value aligned organization. It was the organization that, I could get credentialed, through relatively easy. And so that's what I did. And Chad reached out to, I forget exactly how he became aware of NAGA, but he did, and reached out and asked if they had a Detroit chapter. They didn't. He reached out to me, and I was like, nah, I never heard of them, but it sounds great. That's what I've been looking for, because these folks over here pissing me off, and if we need to do something for our own people, we need to create a space for our people where we can train them the right way, make sure that they're aware of their history, and do so in an environment that is conducive for learning and respectful, of our journey here in America. So we moved forward with starting the Black Bottom Gun Club in 2017, named after the historic, Black Bottom Gun Club here in the city of Detroit. Like many Detroiters, my people came here from the South, and many of them moved to the Black Bottom neighborhood. Both sides of my grandparents and my father, lived in Black Bottom. And so that was the area of Detroit. Some people are familiar with Black Wall Street, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can consider Black Bottom, as Detroit Black Wall Street. That was the center of Black life, in the city of Detroit, before urban renewal and the expansion of the interstate highway system, ran through it with I-375, and kind of, as seen elsewhere, throughout the country, really decimated, the community. But once upon a time in the 50s and 60s, that was the center of Black Detroit.
I'm from Pittsburgh, and so we had the Hill District, and it's just a historic district. It's been able to be protected pretty well, I would say, generally, but it's very similar to that.
Yeah. And so we just wanted to honor, the legacy of Black Bottom. And we thought about, what Black Bottom neighborhood represented to Detroit. We wanted to replicate that and represent the same similar concept, within the Second Amendment community.
The next question I have for you is, so we see the stigma against gun ownership, present in a number of different cultures, subcultures. Certainly in progressive liberal culture, there's stigma against it. Jewish culture, I've had Rabbi Hillel Nori on a number of times, and we talk about trying to overcome the stigma against gun ownership in Jewish culture. And Chad and I have talked about the reticence in the Black community, towards armed self-defense, and this particular really important right. I would say it's quite an important right. I guess before I ask you the question, I'll always like to say both liking guns and not liking guns are normal. And it's okay if you like guns, and it's okay if you don't. Both are normal and both are understandable. But there is a stigma in the Black community. And Chad brought this up in that podcast. Like the myth of, and these are his words, the myth of the Black person plus guns equals bad stuff / criminal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
How is it dealing with that, Lauren? Talk about that a little bit. Talk about what your experience is with being up against an understandable aversion towards guns and gun ownership in the Black community. What's that like, and how's that going?
Yeah, great question. I think that's a byproduct of so many things. Many Black people live in urban centers. Many urban centers across the country are democratically led. Part of that democratic mantra is guns are bad. And so it is, easily understood that is being echoed through your political leaders, sometimes, many times your church leaders, that becomes ingrained in the psychology of that populace, that gun ownership is bad. And so when you take that and then you talk about the reality that individuals experience in urban centers because of some of the systemic issues that we talked about earlier, that is their reality. The reality is that many times individuals using firearms in the heat of passion, but more relevant to the normal everyday citizen is that someone may try to rob them or harm them, and they may have a firearm. And so that becomes their reality. A lot of times, I think the media has a role there as well. I can speak for Detroit because I've, mainly lived here. Our media tends to be a horror story every night. This person got shot. This person got shot a different way. This person got shot in a more extreme way. In this negative news, and this negative news, and here's something great that happened, and back to the negative news. And so if that's all you're hearing every day, despite the numbers falling or any, whatever, if that's all you're hearing because it's sensationalized and that, that gets the people, it's provocative, gets the people going, that gets the ratings. That plays a role in the psychology of people when they think, well, this is a big issue, guns are bad. And so you have generations of individuals experiencing that. And it's no wonder why there is an aversion to firearm ownership, and it is seen as something to avoid. Where we come in is as far as a counter narrative, right? We are upstanding men and women in our community who you see doing other things positive in the community, and we're also bold about our firearm ownership, and that can be a shock to some people. It's like, oh, Kofi, you carry a firearm every day? Like I wouldn't have thought that of you. But that opens up the opportunity to have dialogue about why that is. And I wasn't there, to be honest, right? Because I didn't want to have all those conversations being in liberal spaces. It became a headache. But then I had to think about, all right, well, what am I doing this? My goal is to, provide that counter narrative and share my perspective. And so let me become more vocal about why this is, even if that makes some people uncomfortable, or if some people frankly just don't understand it. They need to hear from my perspective, especially if they respect me in one way. They may also respect me in another way if they hear, the way that I approach it. And the Black Bottle Gun Club takes that approach, and we go out into the community. We stand on corners. We pass out gun locks. We go into the school system. We work with DPD, the police department. We have all these stakeholder groups so that we can be visible and articulate our perspective and really change and create our own narrative around firearm ownership. Because if we don't do that, then the narrative is just going to run rampant, and you're going to and with that rampant narrative, you're going to have misguided laws that ostensibly are well-meaning. I think we have a lot of legislators who mean well, but don't have that cultural connection or that connection to reality on how these laws are going to be enforced.
Sure.
That's another aspect of our work is, yeah, that sounds good, but we know from empirical evidence that these laws are going to be more heavily enforced in our communities. And we know that if you continue to criminalize poverty, if you continue to criminalize not having your firearm stored properly or not announcing that you have a CPL in Michigan right away as soon as you get pulled over, and you incarcerate people, that is only going to exacerbate the issues that we're trying to resolve. And so we have to be more intentional and thoughtful in the laws that we introduce and how we enforce them. And so that is part of the role that we take.
For the Black Bottom Gun Club, there was a surge, as I recall from talking to Chad. There was like a surge that happened right after that. Philando Castile and George Floyd and
Mm-hmm.
that like horrific block of time that we had there with police misconduct shootings and other murder, Ahmaud Arbery.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking about there was a surge there, and I think Chad said there was a general surge during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
How are things now? Have things like evened out a little bit? How's membership and interest and things like that for Black Bottom Gun Club?
Yeah, there were definitely a surge, really beginning in 2020 because of social uprisings and the pandemic and the uncertainty. And when people have fear in any realm, they tend to have fear in other realms as well. And so we saw a surge in membership around then as well. I would say, and Chad is really the CEO, president, the all things Black Bottom Gun Club, so he would have a better idea. But from my perspective, as vice president, things have really steadied out. There's still a surge in interest. When we first started, we had about maybe 5 people would come to our meetings. And so we have a membership of a little over 200 now. There's still a lot of attention from the media and from the general public about our work and interest in partnerships. And so we can continue to see that surge. I think that's a combination between what's taking place socially, but also because of the work that we put in the community in making ourselves more known and advocating for Second Amendment rights, be entrenched and really claiming that right, not just the Second Amendment right, but a God-given right, and being vocal about that. I think attention continues to come our way because of the work that we put in the community. But CPL classes continue to be full. So I think people continue to want to train themselves. As you know, and I'm sure most instructors know, that ongoing educational piece is what's lacking, right? People want to, have the license to carry, but the ongoing educational piece is lacking. And so we hone in on that. But to succinctly answer your question around the surge, I think it has steadied out. But it still is a marked improvement from prior to 2020.
Across the board, I don't think it's debatable that gun ownership is dominated by males.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what's up. And my observation is at the end of the day, a middle-aged man, doesn't matter what his skin color is, doesn't matter where he's from, if he's worked all day, when he gets home, he doesn't want any bullshit. He doesn't want any extra stuff, right? If he's a gun owner, the vast majority of these cats are going into the gun bench room and they're going to play at guns. They're going to clean them and look at them and pull them out. And that makes most gun owners feel good, right? But everything else is like a hassle. So getting gun owners generally to get up off of their ass and go do extra stuff isn't really the default. Like, they're not going to get up and get active. Training, even taking their guns out to just go plink is sometimes asking. And I think that's largely because of what I call the black hole of male psychology. Like, when you're a middle-aged male, you don't want to go do the extra. You just did the stuff all day. Now you want me to go out and I want to sit down. So my observation is it doesn't matter what community Or, we have to fight against that black hole. Chad told me, he's been offered a free jujitsu class and like free class for if you take, I think he said, if you took your licensing class with him, he would give a free jujitsu class and then a free additional class or something like that. And I can't remember what he said. Only 4 people took him up on it out of hundreds.
Yeah, no.
And to me, that's not about color. That's about dudes, right? So it's just another one of these things where people have to realize what we're up against when we're trying to do the right thing with guns and got things to go better. Like, it's tough, man. There's a lot to overcome.
So let me keep it 100 with you. I am dude. I'm gonna keep it all the way real. I mean, Chad knows this, it's no secret. Obviously, I train more than the average individual.
Sure.
I am not a gun enthusiast. Like I told you, I got in this because I was broke and I needed to make some money. And then we started the gun club because I recognized a need that wasn't being filled in my community. And so we collectively took on that role, and I'm committed to that. So there is a level of commitment, but I am still more closely aligned with the average Detroiter than I am with the average member in the Second Amendment community.
Sure.
Meaning I can't, I can't break it down the yard. I can do those things, but that's not something I may have to go to a YouTube video to remember certain, aspects. And I can't rattle off all of the, different firearms, who came out with this. I know, my guns. I know how to work those. I know how to put a round down range on target. I know how to defend myself. And I think that's what most of the people in the community care about, right? Whatever the reason is that they got into firearm ownership, they want to know how to be able to defend themselves. And that's what I'm more aligned with.
Sure.
I don't go to, the matches and the things like that. I go to the range to make sure that I'm not going to be caught slipping. Like, that's just my reality.
Sure.
And I think that is aligned with, most of the people that we teach. They care about the basic necessities, and similar to when we were talking about liberals and the leftists and why they aren't getting the traction from the black community. I think the same applies in the Second Amendment community too. I think there's a lot of self-righteousness and down talking. Not to say that you were doing that, but I see a lot of that taking place in the Second Amendment community about the people that we want to educate. And I think we have to do a better job of understanding, the people that we want to educate, what their motivations are, and then working towards creating space for them to feel welcomed in. And I think this is not just a man issue or a woman issue, because I think that the lack of going to training and things like that and wanting to relax, I think that takes place across the sexual spectrum. I think, and that's why we place emphasis on the cultural aspect of this work as well. That's why we place emphasis on the community relationship work as well, the political, the social, the policy work, because that impacts people much more, like statistically speaking, right? Your chances of being a defensive counter versus your chances of being implicated in a deficit-based policy. Your chances are you're going to experience a deficit-based policy that may be related to firearms, then you're going to be in a defensive shooting situation. And so that is how we grab people and say, hey, there's a new law that says you could be charged criminally if you don't store your firearm safely. And chances are you have a firearm, you have a child, and so we educate them on the issue of negligent discharges and how many of our babies have harmed themselves or others because there was a negligent firearm owner. Like those issues resonate more with our people than taking a defensive pistol course. Like that's just the reality that we're in. Now we want them to take these courses and do all these things, but as you mentioned, they're going to work. They have their issues. They they're living life, right? They got a firearm. They took the course because they want to be able to protect themselves. And so, how do we help them protect themselves outside of the physical protection? How do we help them protect themselves from themselves related to safe storage? How do we protect them and make sure they're aware of these policies that are being imposed upon them that may impact them? And so, that's kind of my lane. That's that social aspect of the work, which I think
Yeah.
is important.
Well, I mean, I only have so much time and energy, like we all do, right?
Yeah.
And I have a shooting lane in my woods 150 yards from where I'm sitting right now.
That is a wonderful statement. In my woods, I want some woods.
Yeah, well, I'm renting right now, but it's the old dude, and I'm working on it to try to buy it from him.
Nice.
It's a small bit of woods. It's a long story, man. I'm going to talk to you about all this stuff, but but I don't even get over there. I'm not a ringer. I could be a ringer. I could crush it with a gun, long gun, handgun. I could, but I'm not. I'm an intermediate shot. I do train. I do work at it. Self-defense is my priority. It's really the only thing I'm fully interested in.
Same.
Plinking is cool. Competitive stuff is cool, but everybody has to make a choice. Mm-hmm. I think most people do anyway. I have to make a choice, and that choice is self-defense. But I'm involved in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with this nonprofit organization, Liberal Gun Owners, and I spend the vast majority of my time researching and writing. And I do not have the energy to research and write and go shoot a lot. Like, when I'm done working with my brain on guns, the last thing I want to do is touch a gun, think about a gun. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Right. My overall point was a lot of gun owners don't do anything extra, shooting or anything, education or extra energy for safety or anything. They just don't.
No.
So there's a lot of motivation like that has to happen, right? There's a lot of, again, we light bonfires to get somebody to light a match. And I've been around a lot of different industries and a lot of different things in my life. I don't define myself as a gun person. It's just one of the things I do.
Yeah.
But this is one of the weirdest spaces, man. This is one of the weirdest spaces for behavior and doing stuff.
Yeah. And I just want to, I think it has to go beyond motivation because the majority aren't going to be motivated. I think we want to focus in on the responsibility, right? There are things as a man, as a father, you aren't motivated to do. It's your duty to do. So you do it, right? This is what you're supposed to do. And so I think, we have to take that approach, with firearm owners as well. Like, hey, you haven't cleaned your firearm. You haven't gone to the range. You aren't up to date on the latest laws or how to properly store. That is your duty. That's your responsibility as a firearm owner, whether you're motivated or not. That's what you have to do. That's the bare minimum.
And I can tell you for a fact, white people, this is going to sound so dumb, man. White people are not the same as black people when it comes to gun rights because we've had them and enjoyed them and you guys haven't been fully right. Okay. So that sounds dumb when I say that because you're like, Randy, I know what are you fucking talking about? It's my whole life. I understand that. But when you have something and you didn't have to really work for it,
take it for granted.
Why would you dig deep for responsibility? Why when these cats, I live on the edge of the red country, man. You know what I mean? Like between blue and red. These dudes still go out. They don't know shit about guns. They have guns. They don't know shit about these guns. They go out and blow shit up with tannerite and they don't fucking care, Kofi. They don't care about these. They'll be at the store and be like, gun rights. But what do they fucking care? They don't do anything extra for it. The idea that like people in the rural country are all going 2A and then they're all going they're fighting for gun laws. They're not fighting for shit. They go out and they blow shit up and they just shoot them when they want. And you can hear it in my neighborhood. Everybody, it's my neighborhood, but it's the country. Everybody shoots on their property, man. They go out for 10 minutes a year. Bap, 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 bap. That's it. And you don't hear them again for like 4 weeks. They don't do, it's not like they're out doing it.
I'm not sure what your
So,
incentive is, but you're making me jealous.
well,
like,
I mean,
like,
I'm gonna have you and Chad come down. We should do a thing for sure.
and blow shit up.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be responsible and blow shit up, not just like these dudes that blow shit up. So I wanted to ask you maybe one more question, because I know we're getting long, and it's based on something we've dealt with that I think needs to be dealt with, like as a general liberal community, center to left, because we have the same problem with Democrats and progressively liberal people. Same problem in the Jewish community, as I talk with Rabbi Hillel Nori regularly. So Chad said in that podcast that you guys should not be relying on the state or the government to protect black bodies. Mm-hmm. That's his words, mm-hmm. Right? And that applies to liberals. It applies to the Jewish community. Like the very concept that the police and the army and the government, they got you, don't worry. Right? And that's prevalent. Certainly in liberal culture, it is. Like, as long as there's cops and you live in the suburbs, you're good. Like, you don't even have to think about this thing that humans have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years, by the way, 300,000 at least. Up until 150 years ago, everybody had to be concerned about their personal security.
Yep.
There were no cops. This is a new thing for humans to not have to do that. So it's a deep thing. So tell me a little bit about that, because that concept's really important. Like the black community understanding that it simply cannot rely on the state, the police, the National Guard, the army, or politicians for protecting themselves. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I agree with Chad. That is not something that we can or historically have been able to rely on. I take a more traditional approach. I think is incumbent upon the men of a community to provide that protection for the community. We talked also about me being a realist and understanding the role that policing plays in our society, and also have conversation around, okay, what needs to be true in order for us to get to a space of public safety versus policing. I don't think that's a light switch that can be flipped on or off. I have many conversations with folks that were, despite the terminology, the defund the police movement, right? And I get the impetus and the sentiment behind it, is that, policing in the traditional sense hasn't worked for the black community. And that's something that I can agree with. I think public safety is something that we all deserve. I think the state does have a role in providing public safety, not just paramedics or fire, but also an element of law enforcement, because of the investigative, primarily for me, is more so about the investigative capacity that policing has in communities. When something takes place in the hood, yeah, you may know about it, but you also get a lot of wrong information. Get a lot of finger pointing. And I do think there needs to be a mechanism of investigating situations in law enforcement. But I think the primary gripe is the way policing is done. And I think, and I agree with the sentiment that certain systems are so, whether you think it's broken or functioning as it's designed to be, they're so harmful that you need to just develop a entirely new system from the ground. And I agree with that. I do think there needs to be a runway for that to take place, right? Practically speaking, policing isn't going anywhere at the near time, right? Now, if there are communities that can develop an alternative to policing, focusing on public safety, which is taking place and really in Detroit, with the community violence interrupters who, along with other efforts from the city, have saw a drastic reduction in murders and crime. I think I am prayerful that is a model that can really take hold, to be scaled across the board, so we can get to a different space in our country. And I think Detroit, because of we're the largest and highest majority black city in America. Because crime, because poverty is so prevalent here. I think if we can get these issues right here in the city of Detroit, we can then model that for other entities across the country. That is my hope. And so, lots of thoughts around that. I know there are individuals who this is what they do. And as I'm speaking, I'm like, all right, what is this person going to say? Try to make sure I don't say anything wrong. But yeah, I think the way we do policing in this country needs to be rethought, revamped. And I think another system of public safety is what the people deserve. And so I am more so on the public safety side of things, because the way we've done policing hasn't been working and wasn't designed to work for our community. There are entities that do a better job than others. I think Detroit had a majority white police force in the city that was primarily black. Before we had our first black mayor, Kofi, and he made that one of his priorities to integrate the policing department. And so, if you come to Detroit now, I would say I don't know the exact numbers, but visually speaking, the majority of our police officers look like the residents of the city of Detroit, meaning black, right? And come from the city. And I do think that it has a major role in the way that DPD interacts with this citizenry. Even though I talk to my public defender friends and they say, "Oh no, they corrupt too. They be wilding." So it's always something. but but from a casual citizen, and having lived in other places, DPD does a better job than most. But I do think that's something more holistically that we need to address and really focusing on public safety instead of policing. And I do think I'm in my line of work, we talk about community centered design a lot. And that means that you are not just bringing in a focus group of people who are going to agree with what you are committed to doing, is that you really go through a design phase and listen to the people, see what their issues are, as well as their solutions that they've come up with that they feel that should be supported by the municipality or the state. And I believe we should take that approach to public safety as well.